Hey guys, welcome to Draw from the Hip. I'm Desiree Shelley. Great to see you. I am so excited about this video because it is one of my favorite topics, which is paint. More specifically, it's the question I get asked the most when I'm selling art supplies, and that is, how do you pick the paint that is right for you? Even though this is an incredibly common question, it's still a challenging one to answer because it's a different answer for every person. Someone who just wants to put some color down and doesn't want to spend a lot of money is going to need very different paint than someone who is concerned about things like longevity and color fastness. So if I recommend different things for each person, how do I put this in a video so that all of you who are watching can get the information you need out of it? Don't worry guys, I've got this covered. I'm going to do this by answering three main questions. The first is, what is paint? The second is, what am I paying for when I buy expensive paint? And then I'm going to explain what is the difference between craft paint, student paint, intermediary paint, and artist quality paint. Kind of the pros and cons of each. With all this information, once you're done this video, you're going to be able to confidently walk into any art store and pick out the paint that is right for you and your project. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk about this in a lot of detail. So if you just want to skip to the parts that are relevant for you, that's totally cool. I have a timestamp list down in the description below, so you can jump around if you want. The first question, to understand differences in paint, you need to know what is in paint. Paint is made of basically two things. It is a pigment, which is the thing that gives paint color, and it is a binder, which is the thing that allows the pigment to behave like a paint. In oil paints, this is usually linseed or walnut oil. In acrylics, this is acrylic polymer emulsion. And in watercolors, this is usually gum arabic. In the more expensive higher end paints, that's all there is. But in student paint and craft paint, you're also going to have filler. Filler is something inexpensive they add to bulk up the paint. Usually it's water. You are getting a better quality product. You're going to be getting better quality pigment, better quality binder. All of it adds up to how long you can expect your artwork to last. The higher end paints usually offer a lot more single pigment paints. Single pigments are a desirable tool because they are more predictable. You are paying more for a brand name, but a reputable brand, it's actually worth it to do that because brands should deliver more. Expect your artist quality brands of paint to be performing ongoing, rigorous scientific research to continually try to improve the paint they're offering you. So we've quickly summarized what paint is and what you're paying more for with expensive paint. So it's time for the nitty-gritty. I'm going to break down what is craft paint versus student paint versus intermediary paint versus artist quality paint, the pros and cons of all of them, and help you decide which one is going to be perfect for what you're intending to do. Before we get into this, I don't consider any type of paint good or bad. They each have different things that they're good at and not so good at. So I'm going to break down the qualities of each paint so that you can make the call on what paint is good. By good, I mean the right paint for you. Craft paint. Craft paint is really inexpensive. It is going to be found in a lot more stores, so you can often find it at places like Walmart and Michael's very easily. You're often going to find it sold in sets and in small tubes. This can be a good thing if you don't want to have to worry about picking colors. However, if you want to replace a particular color that you loved and you used all of, sometimes it can be tricky to do that with craft paint. In craft paints, the pigment is less likely to be labeled and it's quite likely to be a blend of inexpensive pigments. Craft paint is not designed for longevity, is much less likely to be light fast, and it is possible that the surface may be delicate or prone to flaking. Craft paint is the least pigmented paint you can buy, which is cool if you're going to be working mostly in transparent or semi-transparent layers, but it can make it hard to achieve opaque coverage if you want solid color. Because of its low pigmentation, sometimes craft paints can be hard to mix. For example, mixing blues and yellows, sometimes the blues will overpower the yellows and it can be hard to get used to the ratios for mixing. Craft paint does have filler in it. Basically consider this paint stretched as far as it can go already. You can't really add more water or medium. You are going to get a diluted color, so you're going to lose color intensity. Craft paint is totally the paint for you if you don't want to spend a lot of money, if you don't have a lot of options for stores nearby, if you are working on smaller projects, if you use transparent layers, and if you want a paint that's ready to go right out of the tube. Don't even need to add water. In fact, I don't recommend it. Craft paint is not the paint for you if you want to be using a lot of opaque colors. It's not the paint for you if you want to know what is in the mix that makes your paint, if you're working on larger projects, if you can get to an art store, and if you want your piece to last. Student paint is the next step up. It is still very affordable and still fairly easy to find. You're going to find it in art stores, but you're also going to find it in craft stores like Michael's. It has more pigment than craft paint, but it's still not highly pigmented, which means the same things I said about craft paint will apply here. Easy to do transparent, semi-transparent layers, harder to get more opaque coverage. It's probably going to come in bigger bottles. It's not designed for longevity. Still probably not going to be very light fast and a bit prone to fading. The pigments on student quality paints are usually labeled, and you're still going to see a lot of these paints being a blend. That is just how they keep the price low. Again, like craft paint, student quality paint contains a fair amount of filler, which means that if you add more water or medium to it, you get that diluted color and you lose color intensity. But it also means you don't have to add anything, it's ready to go. Sort of like a slightly improved craft paint, student paint is the paint for you if you don't want to spend a lot of money, if you like to work in transparent layers, and if you want a paint that's just ready to go right out of the tube. Student paint is not the paint for you if you want to work with opaque colors or if you have any concerns about the longevity of your creation. Intermediary paint is also called professional quality paint, and it is going to be mid-range in price. You're going to be able to find intermediary paints mostly in art supply stores. Intermediary paint is going to have more pigment than student quality paint, but less pigment than artist quality paint. The pigments, however, will be labeled. In these lines, you are likely to see both blends and single pigment paints, and the tubes and bottles will likely be the same size as the artist quality paint. There is a better quality binder in these, and there is little or no filler in intermediary paints, which means that you get a more concentrated paint that you can add mediums to or water and make your paint go further without having loss of color. Intermediary paints aren't as focused on longevity as artist quality paints are. They are a better product overall, so you're going to have better longevity. These paints, though they can be mixed with medium, are also awesome straight out of the tube. Intermediary paint is the paint that I recommend for everyone who's starting out because the way these paints behave is close enough to really good quality paint that you're going to have a much more satisfying painting experience starting with this. If you're not sure, just grab a couple of tubes and play with those before you spend more money. This paint is the paint I recommend if you're just getting started but haven't committed to your medium yet, and if you have the budget for it. They're going to be more likely to do what you're expecting them to do. Intermediary paint is the paint for you if you want to invest a bit more in your supplies, if you want to get a paint that behaves true to type, if you want to be able to easily achieve opaque color, or mix with mediums if you want to get a more transparent look. And it's also a great paint to use straight out of the tube. Intermediary paint is not the paint for you if you want specific pigment behaviors, if you're extremely concerned about the longevity of your piece, if you want to work with the best paint you can buy. And we're wrapping it up with artist quality paint. This is the best paint you can buy. It's also the most expensive. And as I got into briefly before, when you pay more, you're getting more. You're going to primarily find them in art supply stores, and artist quality paints define the behavior for this type of paint. So they're definitely going to act like oils are going to act like oils. Artist quality paints will have the best quality binder, and they will have zero filler. Because artist quality paint has such a concentrated amount of pigment in it, you can kind of use it like juice concentrate and add it to mediums and make your tubes of paint go really far. The ratio for golden paint is 1 part paint to 2 parts medium. That's like tripling your tube of paint. Pigments will be labeled on artist quality paint, and you'll be able to find lots of single pigment paints as well as a variety of hues and convenience mixtures. This is the paint for you if you're investing in your paints. If you want the best quality materials, if you want really concentrated color that you can then manipulate with mediums to extend your paint even further, and if you want the best chance at longevity for your final piece. Artist quality paint is not the paint for you if you can't afford it or if you're very casual about your painting. and it's not worth investing in for you. Now that we've got through the bulk of that, I have some additional points that I think are going to be super helpful for you. First, some people recommend using a less expensive paint for your underpainting and then using a better quality paint on top of that. I don't recommend this because your painting is a cohesive whole. If you cheap out on the underlayers, you're actually going to affect the entire piece's longevity. If you do have some inexpensive paint that you want to use up, use it for some studies, or even better, donate it somewhere and practice with the paint you intend to keep using as you move forward. When I speak of light fastness, I am talking in generalities. Light fastness is a pigment-specific behavior, but it's often a very desirable one, which means that light fast pigments tend to be more expensive and are less likely to be included with paints with a lower price tag. You should know that some pigments will fade even when they're very high quality, and that you can look up the light fastness so you can know this in advance. For all you watercolorists out there, you work in super thin layers, so going with a paint that has more pigment, like an intermediary or artist quality paint, is actually going to really be worth the investment for you because it's going to last and last and last. If you do go with a less expensive option, be wary because some of those pans, the paint can be really hard in them and it can destroy your brushes fairly quickly. Just do a test, then you'll know. For oil painters, student quality oil paints behave in a dramatically different way from intermediary and artist quality paints. If you want to get into oil painting, it's really worth it to just jump right into intermediary. Longevity can be a huge issue with inexpensive oil paints. Cracking, yellowing, and flaking can happen if you don't do the right steps, even with good quality paints. So with the less expensive stuff, it's probably best to consider it inevitable. Artist quality and intermediary quality acrylics come in a couple of different formulas. You can have heavy body paint, which is thick like toothpaste. You can have a soft body paint, which is sometimes called fluid paint. It will be the consistency of warm honey. And there's also high flow paint or ink, which is like ink, so it's the consistency of water. The consistency or the texture of the paint is different, but the ratio of pigment in the paint remains that same high level of pigment. This is tricky because student quality paints are almost always runny, so using consistency alone isn't a good way of determining the quality of your acrylics. I hope this video made you so excited that you were about to bust out the door or blast through the internet and order exactly the paints that are perfect for you and your project. And please, if you have a brand that you want to know more about or if you have more questions, get in touch with me. I'm happy to be a resource for you. Thanks for watching Draw from the Hip. This was a super fun video to put together, so I hope you learned a ton and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye guys!